The hum of the jet engines filled the air, steady and low, as the flight attendants prepared for takeoff. Polished shoes clicked on the glossy floor of the business class cabin. The scent of leather seats mixed with the faint aroma of espresso and expensive perfume. Laughter rippled across the aisles, sharp, shallow laughter that always carried judgment. Emma Carter sat quietly in seat 3A, her little boy resting against her shoulder. He was 5, maybe 6, fast asleep, a worn teddy bear clutched in one small hand. His soft breathing rose and fell against her chest. She brushed a lock of his hair back with quiet tenderness, her other hand resting on the armrest, calm and unmoving. Then came the voice. "We pay to fly business class," said a man's smooth, mocking tone, "not to sit in a daycare." Heads turned. Charles Davenport, mid-40s, sharp jaw, suit worth more than most people's annual rent, sat 3 rows behind her, his smirk illuminated by the overhead lights. His gold watch caught the light each time he gestured, as if it too wanted to be seen. A few passengers chuckled, quick, cruel sound of approval. Others exchanged knowing looks, smug smiles. Emma didn't reply. She simply smiled faintly, holding her son closer, her eyes calm and unreadable. Charles leaned back, satisfied with himself. His assistant, Olivia, tapped away on her phone with manicured nails, whispering something to the hedge fund manager beside her. He chuckled. Laughter spread like a slow contagion. Emma stayed still. She'd learned long ago that silence could speak louder than any defense. And then, a few minutes later, the captain's voice echoed over the intercom, firm, composed, carrying authority. "Attention, passengers," he said. "We now require immediate guidance from International Aviation Security Advisor, Mrs. Emma Carter." The cabin froze. Emma didn't move. Her son shifted slightly, his small hand tightening on her sweater. The laughter died instantly, swallowed by the pressurized air. Charles blinked, his smirk faltering. His hand went to his tie as though the air had suddenly thickened. All around, eyes darted toward Emma, the woman they had dismissed moments ago. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. Her fingers simply brushed her son's hair, her face as still as water before a storm. The business class lounge had always been a world of surface, gleaming chrome, polished wood, champagne smiles. But now it felt colder than the clouds outside. Emma's plain gray sweater and faded jeans stood out among tailored suits and silk dresses. Her sneakers didn't belong beside polished Italian leather. Her simple ponytail looked out of place against the sculpted waves and jewels that surrounded her. To them, she was a mistake, a misplaced piece in a perfect picture. But the quiet confidence in her stillness unnerved them. Charles shifted again, clearing his throat as if to reclaim control. "A security advisor," he said loudly, "must be a mistake. What you gonna do? Change a diaper and save the world?" A few people laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Olivia smirked, flipping her hair. "She probably used a discount ticket," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Look at her. How else could she afford to sit here?" A woman in a silk scarf leaned toward her husband, whispering behind her hand. "She looks more like a maid than a business-class traveler. Did you see that old suitcase? Thrift store, I'd bet." The man nodded, his cufflinks gleaming like metals. "Exactly. People like her ruin the experience. This isn't a bus." Their words washed over Emma like a tide she'd learned to stand against. She didn't respond. She simply adjusted her son's blanket, her hands steady and deliberate. "She shouldn't even be here," muttered another passenger, a woman whose diamonds sparkled too brightly under the lights. "Dragging a child into business class? It's embarrassing." Emma finally looked up, not at Charles, not at Olivia, but directly at the woman with the diamonds. Her gaze was calm, unwavering. "Is it?" she asked quietly. The woman froze, caught off guard by the composure in Emma's tone. Before anyone could reply, Charles laughed, raising his wine glass. "Oh, she speaks," he said mockingly. "Don't get used to it, sweetheart. You're out of your league." Emma turned her eyes away, her calm unbroken. The flight attendants continued their rounds, but even they felt the tension hanging in the air. One younger attendant, Clara, glanced at Emma and quickly looked away. as though she glimpsed something she shouldn't. Emma's silence wasn't weakness. It was armor. Minutes passed. The laughter softened. The plane climbed through the clouds. Passengers reclined in their luxury seats, pretending the moment had passed. It hadn't. Emma rested her hand on her son's small leg and took a slow breath. Her thumb brushed against a photograph tucked inside her bag, a memory she carried everywhere. A man in a pilot's uniform, smiling beside her under a bright summer sky, his arm wrapped protectively around her. Her son hadn't been born yet, but the life they'd imagined lingered in that picture. The corner was worn from years of being held, a relic of love and loss. Clara appeared again, her expression more composed this time. "Mrs. Carter," she said quietly, "the captain needs to speak with you." Charles snorted. "What's next?" "They need her to mop the cockpit floor." Laughter rippled again, shallow and brittle. Emma rose smoothly, handing her sleeping son to Clara. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was soft but confident. She walked toward the cockpit, her steps measured. The whispers trailed behind her like smoke. "She's probably just a glorified secretary," someone said. "Diversity hire," another muttered. "Maybe she's delivering papers." A man in a cashmere sweater scoffed. None of them saw the way Clara's expression changed as she followed, not with judgment, but respect. Inside the cockpit, the captain turned, his face grave. "Mrs. Carter," he said, handing her a headset. "We've got an unidentified aircraft on radar. We need your assessment." Emma nodded, slipping the headset on with practiced ease. Her hands moved across the communication controls, her voice low and calm as she relayed codes and clearances. The co-pilot glanced at her, surprise flickering briefly across his face. This wasn't the first time she'd done this. It wouldn't be the last. Back in the cabin, speculation buzzed like static. What could she possibly know? Probably pretending. Real experts don't look like that. But when Emma returned a few minutes later, the cabin's laughter had faded to murmurs. She sat down, took her son into her arms, and quietly resumed where she'd left off, rocking him gently as if nothing had happened. A man across the aisle leaned forward. "So what was that about?" he asked with a smirk. "You some kind of VIP? Or just good at pretending?" Emma looked at him evenly. "You'll find out soon enough." Her voice carried a calm certainty that made the man sit back, unsettled. Charles tried to laugh it off, his voice too loud. "Honorary title, I bet," he said, his grin stretching too wide. "They give those out like candy. Doesn't mean she's anybody." Olivia chimed in, but her voice trembled just slightly. "Right. If she were that important, she wouldn't be flying with a kid." This time, no one laughed. The air in the cabin had changed, heavier, expectant. Emma's silence pressed on them all, stronger than any argument. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, rattling glasses and jolting nerves. Charles grabbed his armrest, muttering under his breath. Emma didn't move. Her son stirred half asleep, and she whispered softly until he drifted off again. When Clara passed by with water, she paused at Emma's seat and gave her a small, respectful nod before moving on. The gesture was brief, but everyone saw it. Charles saw it too, and for the first time his confidence cracked. Dinner service began soon after, the clinking of cutlery breaking the uneasy silence. The tension from before still hung in the cabin, heavy and unspoken. Conversation was quieter now, scattered murmurs and forced laughter filling the spaces between the rattling trays. Emma's son stirred, blinking sleepily as the attendant placed their meal in front of them. He reached for a glass of water, but his small hand knocked it over. Water spilled across the tray table and soaked into Emma's sleeve. The sound was small, but it was all Charles needed. "Can't even teach her kid manners," he said, his voice rising, cutting to the calm like a blade. "Some people really don't belong up here." A few passengers chuckled, relieved to have someone restore the pecking order. Olivia laughed too, her tone cruel. "A shabby little mother," she said, loud enough for others to hear. "What an embarrassment to sit with us." The hedge fund man smirked. "Probably abandoned by her husband," he muttered. "That's why she looked so miserable." Emma dabbed at the water with her napkin, her movements calm, unhurried. Her son looked up at her, his eyes big and uncertain. She smiled gently, brushing his hair back. "It's okay, buddy," she whispered, her voice a quiet anchor. "Accidents happen." Her composure made the others uneasy. Their mockery faltered. Even cruelty began to sound hollow against her silence. A woman in a cashmere coat leaned toward her husband, perfume thick in the air. "You know it's sad," she said softly, pretending sympathy. "She's probably scraping by. Maybe this flight is her big moment." Her husband's eyes flicked toward Emma's sneakers. "Yeah," he said, his tone smug. "Probably some charity case. Someone took pity on her." But even as they whispered, there was something in the air, something shifting. The laughter didn't carry anymore. It sounded like fear disguised as arrogance. Emma didn't respond. She adjusted the blanket over her son's legs, then reached into her bag again, brushing her fingers against the photograph. This time, she pulled it out for a second, her husband's face smiling back at her in his pilot's uniform. The man who'd once promised, "No matter where you are, I'll find you among the clouds." Her son tugged her sleeve, his little voice breaking the hush. "Daddy gave me this," he said, holding up his teddy bear. "I know," Emma murmured, tucking the photo away. "He'd be proud of you." A few passengers noticed, and for the first time, shame flickered behind their glances. Still, Charles wasn't finished. Men like him never were. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His gold watch gleamed under the light. "Hey," he said with a forced chuckle, "we were just having a bit of fun earlier, right?" He slid a business card across the aisle, his voice oily smooth. "No hard feelings. I'm always open to collaboration. I could offer you opportunities." Emma looked at the card for a long moment, then at him. "You're mistaken," she said softly. "I don't need opportunities from you." Her fingers pushed the card gently back toward him. The air went still. Charles's smile faltered, his hand tightening around the card until the edges bent. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, pretending to check her phone. The others exchanged glances, whispers swelling again, but not about Emma this time. About him. The whispering grew more anxious, fragmented. "She's not who we thought she was." "Did you hear the captain say advisor?" What kind of advisor gets called mid-flight? Emma's son began to play quietly with his toy plane. The soft plastic tapped against the armrest, a rhythmic sound against the silence. Every motion Emma made was calm, precise, her presence grounding the chaos around her. Then, the captain's voice came again, this time sharper. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we've just received word. The Davenport Group is under international investigation for financial misconduct." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Heads turned instantly toward Charles. "What?" The hedge fund man said, eyes wide. "That's impossible." Charles's face drained of color. He fumbled for his phone, but before he could unlock it, Emma unzipped her bag and withdrew a slim folder. She opened it calmly, revealing credentials stamped with gold. International Aviation Security Advisor, Global Financial Oversight Division. The seal caught the cabin light like a blade. Charles's hand froze midair. Olivia's jaw fell open. Emma closed the folder with a soft click and placed it on the tray table beside her son's teddy bear. Around her, the whisper started again, quieter, nervous now. "She's the one in charge?" "Wait, she's investigating him." "Oh my God, she's at Emma Carter." A woman in a sharp red blazer leaned toward her neighbor. "She's exaggerating," she hissed. "No one that important dresses like that." Her companion nodded weakly. "Yeah, maybe she's just a front. Someone else is pulling the strings." Emma ignored them all. Her son reached up to touch her hand, and she smiled faintly, smoothing his hair again. Charles's voice came out hoarse. You're the one leading the investigation?" Emma met his eyes. "Yes," she said, "and you've just revealed who you truly are." The entire cabin fell silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Her complexion turned white. A headline glowed across the screen. Davenport Group CEO under investigation by International Security Division. The hedge fund man's device vibrated next. A message from his firm. Your client relationship with Davenport Group is terminated, effective immediately. His face went blank. He stared straight ahead. The woman with the diamond earrings turned her face toward the window, hiding her expression, but her hands trembled. Charles sat frozen, his empire collapsing between sips of half-finished wine. "No one truly respects you," he shouted suddenly, the words echoing across the stunned cabin. "It's only your power they want." Olivia's voice wavered. "A cold woman, like you will never know love." Another passenger whispered, "She might save the world, but who would love her?" Charles's sneer twisted. "You'll die alone." The words hung in the air like a poison. Emma didn't react. She simply looked down at her son, who was staring up at her with absolute trust. Her hand rested on his shoulder, her silver wedding band glinting faintly beneath the cabin lights. Then, from the front of the plane, the cockpit door opened. The captain stepped out, removing his hat. His eyes swept the cabin before finding Emma. He walked toward her, steady sure. When he reached her seat, he stopped. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice low but carrying, "I'm not just your captain tonight." He looked at Emma, a faint smile softening his features. "I'm the man who waited 10 years for her." Gasps rippled through the rows. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. Even Charles went silent. The captain reached for Emma's hand, his eyes full of warmth. "Thank you for coming back," he said. "Our son will be proud." Emma's son looked up at him, his teddy bear clutched tight. "Daddy," he whispered. The captain knelt, his voice breaking into a laugh that sounded like relief. "Hey, champ." For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then the passengers began to applaud. Softly at first, then louder, until the entire cabin echoed with the sound. Charles collapsed back into his seat, his face pale. Olivia stared at her phone, where her company email now read, "Contract terminated pending investigation." One by one, the passengers who had mocked Emma turned their eyes away. The woman with the diamonds, the man with the cufflinks, the one who called her a maid. Their silence was heavier than their insults had ever been. Emma stood, her son in her arms. The captain took her suitcase for her. Together they walked toward the front of the plane, hand in hand, their son's sleepy head resting on Emma's shoulder. She didn't look back. As the plane began its descent, city lights spread beneath the clouds like a sea of gold. The applause faded to quiet awe. In that silence, Emma's strength filled the space, quiet, unshakable, undeniable. And for everyone watching, everyone who had ever been judged, dismissed, or mocked for not fitting in, it felt like a promise. "You weren't wrong," the narrator's voice whispered softly. "You weren't less. You carried your truth quietly, like she did. And that was enough." The plane touched down, its wheels kissing the runway. The passengers stayed seated, watching the woman they'd misjudged disappear through the cabin doors, not as a quiet mother they'd mocked, but as a one who'd reminded them all what dignity really looked like.